In the vast, unending expanse of the universe, a warning was sent silent yet profound by a race long vanished into the unknown. Do not attack the humans, they had said. They will hunt you forever. But the Galactic Council, blinded by their own arrogance, chose to ignore it. Now, as civilizations crumble and ancient hunters rise, humanity stands at the brink of annihilation, fighting not just for survival, but to undo the Council's fatal mistake. What began as a warning has become a relentless hunt, and no one is safe. The stars stretched infinitely in every direction, their light barely illuminating the void between galaxies. Beyond the familiar reaches of human space, a phenomenon stirred a pulse in the fabric of existence itself. It wasn't something visible to the naked eye or detectable by the instruments of lesser civilizations. No, this was a whisper, a tremor that resonated in the quiet of space, felt by only the most attuned minds. It came as a warning, distant but clear. A message that seemed both ancient and urgent: do not attack the humans. They will hunt you forever. The source of the transmission was unknown. No one knew from where it originated, nor who had sent it. It wasn't a voice nor a signal that could be tracked or traced. It was more like a ripple in the collective consciousness of the galaxy, a warning encoded in the very fabric of space itself. Some believed it was the last cry of a race long since extinct, desperate to protect what little remained of their civilization. Others thought it was an alert from a sentient species, still alive but beyond the reach of known space. Regardless of its origin, the message was delivered. The Galactic Council, guardians of the cosmos and custodians of interstellar law, had been faced with countless threats before. War, chaos, and the rise of new powers were nothing new to them, but this warning, this cryptic message, unsettled even the most hardened of the Council's members. It wasn't the content that was troubling, it was the unknown. The Council thrived on order, on understanding, and this message defied both. The unknown was always dangerous. In their deliberations, the Council dismissed the warning as superstition, born of fear or desperation from an unknown entity. They believed in their own dominance, their own superiority. Who, after all, could pose a threat to the mighty Galactic Council? The humans, a relatively young and inexperienced race, had expanded swiftly, their reach stretching beyond the boundaries of their own system. Yet their progress was slow compared to the vast empires of older, more established species. The Council had observed them, measured them, and deemed them insignificant in the grand scheme of galactic politics. So they ignored the warning, dismissing it as irrelevant. The humans, they believed, were beneath notice. The galaxy continued its steady march forward, oblivious to the message that had slipped through the cosmic ether. What harm could a warning, lost in the void of space, ever cause? Time passed, and the Council felt vindicated. The humans continued their expansion. They built fleets, explored new worlds, and established colonies. They weren't a threat to the established powers of the galaxy, only a nuisance, a race of latecomers struggling to keep up. The Council was content, convinced they had made the right decision. The warning was forgotten, fading into the background noise of galactic history. But the universe had a way of reminding those who thought they knew everything that they were far from omnipotent. The silence that followed was shattered not by a single event, but by the slow unraveling of civilizations. The humans, though underestimated, had been quietly preparing. Their advancements in technology, once mocked by the more established species, had begun to show results far beyond what the Council had anticipated. They weren't the naive, fragile race they had once appeared to be. They had grown stronger, more determined. And beneath the surface of their expansion, something darker stirred, something that would awaken from the shadows and confront the very foundations of the Council's power. The first encounter came without warning, as though the universe had been waiting to make its move. A ship arrived in the outer reaches of human space, a vessel like none humanity had ever seen. It wasn't of human design, nor could it be traced to any of the known powers of the galaxy. Its appearance defied explanation, sleek and menacing, with a presence that felt older than time itself. The humans called it a shadow, a name born out of fear and uncertainty. The ship came without broadcast, without communication. It simply appeared. Its arrival was like a sudden rupture in the fabric of silence, a breach of the unspoken rules of space. The humans had always believed they were alone in the vastness, that their struggles were theirs alone. But now that belief was shattered. The hunters had come. Their intent was unmistakable: to erase. Entire colonies vanished without a trace, their worlds consumed as though they had never existed. The once vibrant colonies humanity had built were reduced to lifeless voids, planets stripped of life. The hunters were not interested in negotiation, not interested in anything other than extinction. They had not come to conquer, they had come to annihilate. At first, humanity was paralyzed by the shock of it all. They had always been a species of survival, of adaptation. Yet now, facing a threat so profound and ancient, their confidence faltered. The machines they had built to expand and explore, once their pride and hope, seemed powerless against this new enemy. The hunters were unlike anything they had encountered before. They weren't driven by greed or territory, they had a purpose far more ancient and chilling: they hunted. The human response was slow to form. The hunters moved like specters, invisible and unstoppable. They didn't fight wars, they exterminated. It wasn't a matter of defense, it was survival. And yet, even in the face of overwhelming odds, humanity didn't give in. They adapted. Their technology, once inferior compared to the older civilizations of the galaxy, began to evolve at an exponential rate. The humans weren't bound by the limitations of ancient empires or long-standing bureaucracies. They were a species fueled by resilience and innovation, their survival instincts sharper than ever. And as the hunter's grip tightened, humanity began to understand something their ancestors never could. Survival wasn't just about avoiding extinction, it was about outlasting their enemy. The hunters underestimated humanity. They believed the humans were fragile, naive, incapable of resisting. In their arrogance, they had dismissed the young species as an inevitable casualty of time. But humanity proved otherwise. They fought back with every resource they had. They turned their technology against their enemy, developing weapons far beyond their known capabilities. It wasn't just about defense anymore, it was about offense. The hunters had become predators of the galaxy, seeking out weakness wherever they could find it. But humanity, shaped by centuries of hardship and struggle, wasn't a species prone to submission. They fought not just for survival but for vengeance. The humans had tasted fear, and they had survived. What the hunters didn't realize was that fear had changed them. It had hardened them, sharpened their resolve. And in doing so, humanity had become the hunter. In the wake of the first encounters, humanity was thrust into a state of chaos. Worlds lay in ruins, colonies swallowed whole, entire populations lost in an instant. The once fragile and naive humans had been forced to confront an enemy far beyond their comprehension. The hunters were relentless, devoid of mercy, driven only by an ancient hunger for eradication. At first, humanity's response was one of confusion and despair. Their colonies fell like dominoes, one by one, and hope seemed distant, almost intangible. The war was fought on two fronts: space and psyche. The physical destruction was staggering, but the psychological toll was just as devastating. Fear seeped into the fabric of human civilization. Entire species within humanity began to question if their existence had any meaning at all. But in the midst of this darkness, something unexpected began to stir. Out of the ruins emerged a resistance. It wasn't an organized rebellion at first, but pockets of humanity scattered across the galaxy began to realize something crucial. The hunters had not come simply to wipe them out. They had come to erase humanity from existence as though they were a mistake, an anomaly. Yet what the hunters failed to grasp was the very essence of what it meant to be human resilience. Those who had survived the initial onslaught began to piece together a response, not just in technology but in spirit. They weren't just fighting for survival anymore, they were fighting for meaning, for vengeance. It wasn't a war of chance or desperation, it was a war of memory, of reclaiming what had been lost. They remembered the lives stolen, the worlds obliterated, and they vowed to ensure the hunters would never win. What had once been scattered, fractured humanity began to coalesce into something stronger. They adapted their technology, yes, but they also adapted their strategy. They built not just fleets but tactics, advanced methods of warfare that didn't rely on brute strength but on cunning and unpredictability. They became students of their enemy, learning from their mistakes and crafting responses that the hunters could not foresee. The humans learned that the hunters thrived on fear and surprise. The element of the unknown was their weapon of choice, but humanity had something the hunters lacked: hope. The hunters, driven by their own ancient wounds, had long since forgotten what hope even meant. They hunted, but the humans could fight. Humanity began to turn the tables. They developed weapons that could pierce the shadows of the hunters, technologies designed not just to destroy, but to outlast. Their ships, once fragile and vulnerable, became fortresses of resilience, equipped with advanced shielding systems, propulsion technologies that allowed them to evade and strike from unexpected angles. The hunters had always been the predators, but humanity became their relentless prey, always watching, always learning, always preparing. The Galactic Council, distant and removed from the chaos, watched from their sterile chambers, too late to intervene meaningfully. They had failed in their judgment, dismissed the warning as inconsequential. Now the war was being fought not only on the front lines but in the corridors of their power. They had underestimated humanity's potential, and in doing so, they had sealed their own fate. The humans were no longer merely fighting to survive, they were hunting the hunters. They had become something more than they had ever been before. They had become more than the sum of their broken colonies, more than the despair of loss. They had become something new, a force of vengeance and survival, driven by the memory of what they had lost, and the determination to ensure that no one would ever take from them again. As the war between humanity and the hunters raged on, it became clear that no victory would come from sheer strength alone. The hunters, despite their relentless pursuit, were not invincible. They were formidable, but they were bound by their own limitations humanity would exploit in time. What emerged from the shadows of human colonies wasn't just technology, but a growing resistance. In the ruins of their lost worlds, remnants of humanity began to understand something fundamental. This was not merely a battle of survival, but a war of attrition. The hunters were relentless, but their numbers were finite. They came from a place where there was no longer any hope, where the need to consume and erase had become their sole purpose. They were not immortal. They were creatures of desperation, and desperation, humanity realized, could be their advantage. The humans, though scattered and broken, were not just desperate, they were determined. The survivors weren't just victims anymore, they had become warriors forged in the crucible of loss and suffering. In the quiet of their exile, they began to piece together a resistance, one that grew beyond what anyone could have imagined. It wasn't an army in the traditional sense, it was a gathering of those who had lost everything and had nothing left to fear. The hunters fed on fear, but humanity had learned to thrive in the absence of it. In the depths of their hiding places in forgotten corners of the galaxy, humanity rediscovered what had been lost: their will to fight, their will to survive, and their will to seek justice for what had been taken from them. They formed alliances across the stars, banding together civilizations that had once been divided by politics and war. The old boundaries dissolved as species came to understand that they shared a common enemy. The hunters weren't just a threat to humanity, they were a threat to all life. The humans began to work tirelessly, driven by an almost instinctive need to survive. They developed not just weapons but strategies, the kind that the hunters had never encountered before. They learned from their enemies' methods, adapting and evolving faster than any other species. They realized that the hunters thrived in the dark, using fear and surprise as their greatest tools. But humanity had learned how to turn the lights on, to strip the hunters of the shadows they relied on. New technologies emerged: scanners, detection arrays, and long-range weapons designed to pierce the veil of the hunters' stealth. Humanity had once been perceived as technologically inferior, but now they surpassed many of the older, established powers of the galaxy. Their understanding of the universe deepened as they studied the hunters' habits and weaknesses, allowing them to gain an upper hand. The hunters had become predictable in their relentless pursuit, and the humans turned this predictability against them. But this wasn't just a technological war, it was a war of identity. Humanity had always been defined by their resilience and adaptability. It wasn't just their survival that had driven them, it was their very nature. The hunters, creatures born of despair, were predators shaped by a desire to erase what they could not understand. They believed in dominance through destruction. Humanity, however, believed in resilience, in forging forward despite the odds, even when hope seemed lost. From the scattered remnants of human civilization, a new breed of warrior emerged, a breed that no longer fought to survive, but fought to reclaim what had been taken. They weren't motivated by vengeance alone, they were driven by a fundamental understanding of what it meant to endure, to persist. The humans had tasted fear, but that fear had become their weapon. They hunted the hunters with the same unrelenting determination they once showed in the face of their own extinction. And in their pursuit of justice, they found strength they never knew they possessed. The more humanity fought, the more they learned about the hunters, but the more they discovered, the more terrifying the truth became. The hunters were not merely a random threat that had appeared from the void. They were something far older, far more ancient than anyone had realized. They had once been the prey, the victims of forces far beyond their own understanding. Driven to the brink of extinction, they had been forced to adapt in ways no species should endure. They had become the very thing they feared: the predators. The humans, in their search for answers, uncovered this horrifying truth. The hunters were remnants of a lost civilization, a once powerful empire reduced to shadows of their former selves. Their drive to annihilate others wasn't born of conquest, but of survival. They had been hunted to the edge of existence, forced to feed on lesser species in a desperate bid to ensure their own survival. What had begun as a struggle to endure had become an obsession with control, an endless cycle of dominance and destruction. Humanity had not faced creatures born of evolution or competition. They faced a species shaped by extinction, driven by the fear of becoming nothing. The hunters had no home, no purpose beyond hunting and consuming life forms weaker than themselves. They had been consumed by their own past, consumed by the memories of their suffering. In this endless hunt, they had lost themselves. What terrified humanity was the realization that they had become part of this cycle. The hunters didn't just target humanity, they targeted all species, all civilizations across the galaxies. The humans were not just another prey, they were a potential extinction. The hunters had seen them as weak, as expendable, but what they failed to understand was the nature of humanity's survival. They had thought humanity would crumble like the others, but instead, humanity fought back with an intensity and resilience unmatched. The hunters saw humanity as another species to erase, but what they had failed to grasp was that humanity had endured millennia of its own struggle. They had survived wars, environmental collapse, and interstellar isolation. Humanity was a species born of hardship, shaped by the need to survive in the harshest conditions. The hunters were creatures of desperation, but humanity was driven by something more profound: a will to thrive. As humanity learned more about their enemy, they saw the cracks in the hunters' armor. The hunters, though powerful, were not limitless. Their numbers were dwindling, their technology aging and failing in the face of human ingenuity. The more humanity fought, the more they realized that the hunters weren't immortal. They were survivors like humanity, but driven by fear and destruction rather than hope and resilience. What became clear to humanity was that the war wasn't just about survival, it was about breaking the cycle. The hunters' purpose had long been consumed by their own pain, their own suffering. Humanity, on the other hand, had something the hunters could never understand: hope. The humans didn't just fight to survive, they fought to reclaim their future. The hunters, bound by their ancient obsession, saw humanity as another target, another species to erase. But humanity understood something they didn't. They weren't just fighting for survival, they were fighting to define their existence. And in that fight, they discovered a strength that had been hidden for centuries, one that would carry them through the endless void of the galaxy. The battle between humanity and the hunters had become one of attrition, a war fought not just with weapons, but with ideas, strategies, and a fundamental understanding of the enemy. The humans had long since passed the point of desperation and survival. They had become something more, something deadly in their refusal to be erased. The hunters, on the other hand, were bound by their own ancient limitations. They had become creatures driven by instinct rather than intellect, acting on reflexes formed from their long-forgotten past. As the war dragged on, humanity began to uncover something both chilling and illuminating. The hunters had been around far longer than they had previously realized. They weren't a product of some distant, forgotten civilization. No, they were the remnants of an ancient galactic order, one that had existed before even the Galactic Council. They had once been rulers of immense empires, but those empires had been torn apart by forces beyond their control. The collapse of their civilization had left only fragments: the hunters, creatures driven to madness by their own survival. What made the hunters so dangerous wasn't just their technological might, but their innate connection to the void. They didn't just roam through space like wandering nomads. They were attuned to its darkness, to the emptiness between the stars. Humanity, though stronger than before, was still vulnerable in ways the hunters exploited. Their connection to the void had evolved into a power the humans could scarcely understand, an ability to move unseen, to strike without warning, and to vanish as quickly as they came. It wasn't just their ships that made them deadly. The hunters had become masters of the void itself. They didn't need vast fleets or massive armies to erase civilizations. They needed only their knowledge of the darkness, their ability to strike from nowhere, leaving no trace of their existence. Humanity had no such connection to the void. They had always lived in the light, in the certainty of their home systems. The void had been something they feared, something they struggled to navigate. It wasn't an ally, it was a barrier to be overcome. But humanity was not without its own strengths. The more they fought, the more they realized they could adapt. They couldn't match the hunter's mastery of the void, but they could learn to navigate it, to use its chaos against their enemy. The humans began to develop technologies designed to detect and combat the void itself. It wasn't just about building stronger ships or more advanced weaponry, it was about fighting on terms the hunters had always controlled. The void became a battleground in itself. Humanity didn't just seek to survive, they sought to understand it. They studied the very nature of darkness, searching for patterns, for weaknesses. The hunters relied on their connection to the void, but humanity began to understand it in ways the hunters couldn't anticipate. The void became less of a tool for the hunters and more of a weapon against them. Yet, even as humanity began to turn the tide, they knew they couldn't eradicate the hunters entirely. The hunters were remnants of a time long past, beings born of extinction and shaped by it. They couldn't be reasoned with, nor could they be truly destroyed. Humanity understood that their victory wouldn't come in total conquest, but in survival, outlasting the hunters long enough to reclaim their place in the galaxy. What had once seemed like an inevitable extinction was now a war of endurance. The hunters were predators of the void, but humanity had become something far more dangerous, a species that had learned to thrive in the face of the void and in doing so had become its master. As the war between humanity and the hunters stretched on, the once distant threat had become a defining battle for survival. The galaxy itself had become a battlefield, littered with the wreckage of civilizations past, the echoes of forgotten voices. The humans had transformed into something new, more than just survivors, more than warriors. They had become a force bound by purpose, shaped by the lessons of their past and the pain of their losses. The hunters, however, had not changed. They remained driven by their ancient instincts, consumed by the void, and chained to their destructive purpose. Humanity had long since stopped believing they could outfight the hunters. They had fought countless battles, witnessed the fall of countless worlds, and learned the true cost of their war. Yet, the humans weren't just fighting for survival anymore, they were fighting for something greater. The hunters had existed in the shadows for so long that they had become complacent in their role as the cosmic predators. But humanity had realized the one thing the hunters couldn't fathom: they were not prey. In the silence of the void, humanity had found its strength. It wasn't a strength rooted in overwhelming force or ancient wisdom, it was a strength born from persistence, from the refusal to surrender. The humans had understood that victory wasn't just about defeating their enemy, it was about surviving long enough to endure, to outlast the cycle of extinction. The hunters had once seen humanity as nothing more than a fragile, fleeting species, doomed to extinction like so many others. But the humans had become something more, something that could endure, adapt, and fight. The key to humanity's survival wasn't simply in their technology, though their innovations had been essential. They had developed weapons and defenses far beyond the old powers of the galaxy, built fleets that could endure the void. But what truly set them apart was their understanding of what it meant to endure. The humans had faced extinction before, faced death, and somehow they had refused to die. The hunters couldn't comprehend this. They had lost their own understanding of what it meant to hope. The Galactic Council had long abandoned them, too. They had dismissed the warning, convinced of their own power and invulnerability. But now, even they watched from the distant corners of the galaxy, uncertain of what to believe. The humans had grown beyond what anyone had expected. They weren't just fighting the hunters, they were fighting for their place in the stars, and they were winning. Humanity had not destroyed the hunters, nor could they. The hunters were too ingrained in the galaxy, their presence too vast, their legacy too old. But humanity didn't need to destroy them. They needed only to outlast them. The war was no longer about conquest, it was about survival. The hunters, bound by their ancient need to consume and erase, would eventually fade away, whether through their own destruction or through the slow march of time. The humans had learned to fight not just with weapons, but with resilience. In the end, the warning that had once been dismissed had proven true. Humanity was not the prey the hunters had thought. They would hunt humanity no more. The humans had become the hunters, always watching, always learning, always surviving. And in their survival, they had become the architects of their own destiny, reclaiming the stars that had once seemed so distant and unknowable. If the hunters were to fall, it would be to humanity, the very species they had once sought to erase. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Sci-Fi Horizons stories for more thrilling tales of science fiction and adventure. And stay tuned, there are darker secrets yet to be uncovered in the void.